Andrew Banks is one of the good guys of the Australian business scene. One of the original sharks on Shark Tank, he made his fortune by starting two of the world's biggest talent recruitment companies. In this candid interview from his hotel room, he shares some solid business insights, reveals which rock star he would love to be, and what we all need to do to perform better in our own beautiful businesses. Before we get stuck into episode 428 of the award-winning Small Business Big Marketing Show, the Marketing Gold is made possible thanks to American Express and Design Crowd. Now, Design Crowd is the world's #1 custom design marketplace where you get access to 550,000 designers for the perfect design every time, and you can get $100 off your first brief at designcrowd.com/Timbo. And a big thanks to American Express, who recognise that small businesses have many needs. Whether your need is extended cash flow or rewards points to get you flying further faster, there's an American Express business card designed specifically to meet it. To find out which card is best suited for your beautiful business, Google Amex Business and then try to wipe the smile off your face.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show, where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to the Small Business Big Marketing Show. I am your host, Timbo Reid. You, infinitely more importantly, you're a motivated business owner and you're ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it deserves to be. Big show today. Shark Tank Shark, and one of Australia's great business success stories, gives us all a little encouragement and insight into how we can build an empire. A motivated listener shares a podcasting strategy that's working for them. I think you're going to love this week's advertising jingle, particularly if you were an Aussie kid in the 80s. And I'll let you know who is joining us on the show in the coming weeks. I've actually got some ripper guests lined up just for you. As per usual, team, there is marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. Before we go and meet Andrew Banks, I think it's time you and I met in person, face to face. And here's how that can happen. If you are an Amex card holder and can make your way to Melbourne on October 17 or Sydney on November 21, then we can do exactly that. You see, I'm emceeing a fantastic event for American Express called the Idea Exchange. Basically, it's a panel of 4 of Australia's best business minds, headed by Andrew Banks, my guest today. And depending on which event you go to, other panellists include Vino Mofo's Justin Dry and Cargo Crew's Felicity Rogers, both past guests of this show, by the way. We discuss plenty of different aspects of business, how to attract and retain great people, marketing. We talk about numbers and cash flow. Plus, you'll get to meet the panellists afterwards over a cheeky Pinot Grigio and a canapé or two. It's a really good night. I encourage you to come along. You can grab a seat over at business.americanexpress.com.au/idea exchange. And if you do come along, make sure you come up and say g'day. I'd now like to introduce you to a failed actor in Andrew Banks. A good-looking failed actor, but a failed actor nonetheless. Realising his days in front of the camera were numbered, he borrowed $5,000 on 2 credit cards to get his first business off the ground. Fast forward 30 years, and he's established 2 of the world's biggest recruitment companies in Morgan and Banks and Talent 2, employing thousands of people globally over the years. Along the way, he's made an absolute motza. These days, he's back in front of the camera, giving that motza away as one of the sharks on Shark Tank, whose task it is to either fund or maul startups and investors, or I should say inventors, ready to take their idea to the next level. He's proudly, and he owns up to it, made more mistakes than all of us combined, which places him in a pretty good position to share with you and I what it takes to build a business empire from literally scratch. Now, we did this interview face-to-face in his hotel room in Noosa. So it was a lot of fun, but the audio isn't up to its normal pristine quality, but I reckon it's damn good nonetheless. I started off by asking Andrew what he loves about business.
Well, when you ask me that question, I think I love about working for myself. So I think of business and working for myself sort of as one. And to me, that's a creative process. I'm not an artist, a singer, or a rock star. I wish I was. I can play pretty good air guitar.
I do too.
But I think I find business is a creative pursuit. I can wake up in the morning, think of an idea, and then work on that idea and with a group of people come up with a strategy that then takes a product or service to market. And if it works, it makes money and we all celebrate the success and we expand it. And if it doesn't, I go back and have another go.
And do you answer that question as an entrepreneur looking with new business ideas in mind, or are you talking about that inside a current business of yours?
Both. To me, when I'm an entrepreneur, if I think of radio waves coming out of my head, I make them divergent and I think about what's possible in a market. Mm-hmm. When I'm in a business, and I was in a very rigorous, public company that was doing, serious money and had to meet deadlines and budgets and, more importantly, investor returns, I think of my sort of activity as convergent thinking.
Got it. I was just checking my microphone then, and we can keep going.
Yeah.
Yep, good. Yeah, okay, good.
I think of it as convergent thinking, so that means I'm driving all the resources I've got inside an existing business to an outcome, which means making the day's sales, the month's sales, or, whatever other sort of goals I've set myself. Mm.
The idea of being creative in business almost seems a luxury to so many business owners. They are so stuck working in the business. Yeah. I feel like it's a cliche to even say that. But finding that time to think, to inspire others, to create new ideas is difficult. How do you do that?
Well, I guess you've got to like your business. So I think if you're in a yeah, you've got to be passionate about it and love what you're doing. So I find it strange that I would be just trapped by the business and turning the handle. But it can happen. I can remember, I had a week where I did 26 interviews in the recruitment business and I was doing yet another report and sending, resumes to clients. And so sometimes it can feel like you're on a treadmill. So I think the answer is you take time out, you step back, even if that's, taking a day off or just having a weekend where you don't do any work and thinking about what would I change to make myself a bit more interesting, a bit different, a bit more competitive.
We're up here in Noosa at the moment. You're about to give a keynote speech at a conference tomorrow. I speak at a lot of conferences myself, and one of the things that I say to conference delegates is when you get back wherever home is to home, take the next day off before you go back into the office.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Many freak out about it, and I'm sure most don't do it.
No, it's interesting. Candidates used to spend money on a suit for an interview, or go to a hairdresser, and yet really what they should have been doing is spending a day thinking about their resume.
Yes.
and how to position it differently. So in business, sometimes we think we're running hard and we're doing the right thing, but going to a conference and then taking a day off and doing nothing but thinking about your business can create some great opportunities.
Let's talk about point of difference. Being a candidate is you're marketing yourself for a new job. If you own an accounting firm, you're marketing yourself to get the clients you want. What have you seen in the recruitment business where a candidate has really cleverly set themselves apart?
Easy question to answer. The best candidates ask the best questions. They don't make statements about how good they are or what they did. They ask really good questions, which tells the employer that they've really thought about the opportunity. So how do you make money? If I was to join your company in 6 months, what would success look like? Or how did you manage to, double growth in the last 2 years? What did you actually do? I'm fascinated. Good questions impress employers as much as statements about how great you are.
Yes. Because it's a crowded marketplace, that candidate
absolutely.
marketplace.
Yeah, and it shows the employer how you're thinking. Whereas when you talk about what you've done, by definition, you're talking about what you used to think about.
So if I was to take that over to a business owner and use that theory of yours about asking questions to differentiate yourself, maybe business owners should ask some more kind of hard questions of themselves.
Well, that's customer engagement. If you think about it, I mean, there are new jobs emerging where they call them, customer experience enhancers. So there's 187,000 vacancies right now on Indeed in the US for jobs like that, where they're employing people to go and find out what the customer is currently experiencing from that particular company, either online or offline, and make it better. Why? Because that's how they come back.
Are they researchers or are they actual people who have the ability to influence the customer experience?
They do the data mining, they do the feedback, so basically they're asking questions of the customer, but they're interpreting that feedback back to a web page or a in-shop experience or a in-business experience, and they're interpreting it back to the client and saying this is what you need to change to get your customers to love you more.
Oh, I like that. Customer experience has become a very popular term of late. I mean, it's always existed. We've always wanted to give our customers great experience.
There are lots of interesting jobs out there like that.
You mentioned Indeed. That's a relatively new brand in Australia. It's been around for a while in the States.
Yeah, it's a big successful job.
Did they win over, what was the other one, Monster?
Yeah, Monster was my old company. Well, I think Monster was the first. So we were the first, and we got to about 60 million resumes by 2001. But then there's now a dozen in the US, and Indeed is a big player.
Wow. And funny name, Indeed. Do you know where it came from, by any chance?
No.
I don't either.
No. But it's a good word, like monster,
Yes.
I know where that came from.
Where'd it come from?
Well, just because nobody wanted to call it jobs.com or something really. It used to be Monster Board, like a board of ads.
Yes.
And then we changed it just to monster.com because it was a memorable name.
Love it. Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Andrew, before I ask you another business question, you're not an artist, a rock star.
I wish I was.
What would you love to be?
Oh, look, I think I'm okay at my age with who I am. I tried medicine for a little while and then gave up and did acting. I'm happy with my journey, but I think, I think probably I would have liked to have been the lead singer for the Eagles, probably.
Right.
Along with
Don Henley.
With Henley and Frey. I think, and if I had probably written, Hotel California, and I could play the guitar like Joe Walsh. Thank you. If I could play, then that would probably be my ultimate goal. But
wouldn't it be
it's
incredible?
It would be. I mean, and have you seen the documentary?
I have.
Oh, it's amazing.
On Netflix.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, it's amazing on many levels. One is that they actually captured so much footage back then. I mean, today, capturing footage is easy, but back then they actually had the nous to have someone follow them around with a camera.
But of all the people, the one that obviously Henley was a great songwriter along with his partner. But two things came to mind. Firstly, the Beatles were better songwriters, but the Eagles were better musicians, in my opinion, in terms of playing instruments and the whole thing. But the other thing was the humility of the lead guitarist,
Don Henley.
We just talked about him.
Joe Walsh.
Sorry. So the thing that amazed me was
the
humility of Joe Walsh, because as he admitted, he became an alcoholic and a drug addict. Mm-hmm. But he, if you remember, was the one that respected the two leaders of the band, knew that they wrote great songs, and was just happy to be a great team player. It's another message in business. Not everyone can be the leader. You need good team players. And when you pull a team together in a business, make sure everybody understands their place, but respects each other. Yes. And I thought he was a good example of that.
Joe, in that, I'm pretty sure it's in that documentary, he makes a comment about life. And it was a wonderful comment where he said, as you go through life, it feels chaotic. And I'm sure his life felt particularly chaotic. But when you look back, everything happened for a purpose, for a reason. It was all accurate.
I love that quote. And then also later on in their career, he accepted the award and he said, "Thank you for giving me great songs and great lyrics to play my guitar to."
Yes.
So anyway, it's just I like that. It was a man who clearly had gained wisdom through his journey.
I will get back to business, but on the rockstar thing, I have this little game that I play with myself and others when anyone wants to listen. But imagine if there was a room next door to where we are, and in that room, as you walk through the door, there's 100,000 screaming fans yelling out, Andrew Banks, and they want you, and there's that one song that they desperately want to hear you play and or sing.
Feeling,
What is it?
Oh, what is that song? Oh, you mean really a song or a part of my own?
No, what is that song? Is it Hotel California?
I think it's Hotel California or Sultans of Swing.
Oh, isn't that great?
Sultans of Swing, and playing that great riff.
Yes.
Because Dire Straits was another great band, and I loved.
Mark Knopfler.
You're
on Noosa time.
I saw Mark Knopfler live in Santa Barbara last year. I mean, there he stands, in his late 60s, just playing 16 different guitars, so humble and such an amazing musician.
Now, I have to ask you about this because I'm seeing Dire Straits in 3 weeks' time in Melbourne. It's called the Dire Straits Experience. It's 3 of the original band members, no Knopfler.
Right.
And I've seen them before, and they're really, really good.
Yeah.
I would say that the guy who replaces Knopfler is 80% Knopfler. So they start with Telegraph Road, which is no mean feat.
No.
Knopfler, do you know what happened there? Did he leave under good terms?
He wrote most of the songs.
I know he did.
And I don't know how he left, but I know that he just felt he wanted to sort of experiment with lots of different things. So his albums, which, I've got most of the single albums, I think he just was able to do a bit more country. He was able to experiment both with vocals and with guitar. But I'm not sure, how they should do a documentary on it.
They absolutely should. There's no book.
No, but I mean, he to me is the genius behind Dire Straits.
Absolutely is.
Yeah.
I think you are, as I get to know you, you are sort of you're the Keith Richards of the Australian business scene, and you have the looks.
I've got the craggy face.
No, you don't at all.
So when I was 16 years of age, working in a men's store in Chichester in Sussex,
right.
Keith Richards walks in with his girlfriend, and I've sold him a pair of hipsters, a flashy shirt, and a bunch of other things. And I can tell you, he was stoned out of his mind then.
No surprises there.
Because he lived in West Wittering, which was 3 miles down the road from Chichester. So
how is he still alive?
I know, it's amazing.
And also, I think you're also a mix of the late Anthony Bourdain in terms of looks, and you must have been told that 1,000 times.
Yeah, it's all good fun. I love that show. It's so sad.
So sad.
I don't know what happened.
So sad. Well, mental health.
Yeah.
What's your view on the state of mental health in business? Do you have one?
Well, I think it's important to make sure you take time out again and work on yourself. I've had bad days, but I've never.
You're a glass half full kind of guy.
I've never really been depressed. But I feel sorry for people who get stuck down. I think I would say that I was blessed with a happy childhood, loving parents. I'm happily married. When things are working for you. If someone pulls 1 or 2 legs out of under your chair, I can imagine why then business is the last straw and suddenly you feel bad. It's not good. But I guess what I did when we had 2,000 employees and different members of our team went through that, all I did was suggest they take time out. Because I think that's what you've got to do. You've got to basically take a bit of time for yourself so that you can then reflect on the things that are going well. So what I used to ask people to do is, look, I understand it, I'm terribly sorry to hear that whatever the situation is, but take some time off and just reflect on some of the good things that are going on in your life and come back when you're ready.
I think you would have been a good boss, and I want to come to how you create great culture shortly, but what pisses you off in business?
You mean internally or externally? I suppose.
Let's do both.
Well, internally, I think I don't have a lot of time for people who are not doing well but won't take help or advice. So I can live with someone who needs help and support, but is open-minded and not defensive. But I find people who are very talented and defensive, so therefore it's got to be their way. I used to often say, look, just try and imagine when you come into my business that we fold the parachutes. We folded the parachutes many times, and for the first 3 to 6 months, suppress all that creative energy and just jump. Mm-hmm. And trust us because we know what we're doing. And then after 3 to 6 months, when you've learnt the ropes, use all the creativity you like, but don't, because otherwise you're going to take too long.
Mm-hmm.
And on the client side, I think clients who...
Where do we start?
Look, most of our clients were happy, successful companies, and I'm proud that we worked for them. Macquarie Bank, Bankers Trust, Lend-Lease, to name but three that I think we had a significant amount of impact on their early cultures. But I suppose when you'd find a line manager who had their own agenda, I didn't like it when people frankly had prejudice. Don't laugh. In the early 80s, I can remember recruiting for a company that will remain unnamed and saying no Catholics.
Wow.
I mean, forget diversity,
Yeah.
women or other forms of prejudice. I mean, I came from England. I mean, I couldn't believe my ears. So that kind of, I guess, closed-mindedness. And more subtly it might be, well, we always want someone with this sort of background. It's got to be that. And I'd say, well, why? What about thinking about people with different backgrounds? So I liked clients that were open-minded and adventurous, not set in their ways.
When you do come across those issues that annoy you in business, I imagine you are now, but have you always been good at actually opening the discussion and saying, hey, listen?
Oh, yeah. Well, to me, it's handling an objection. So, I only want someone with, well, you must have a very good reason for saying that. Can you tell me what it is? So I'd sort of try to get the conversation going and say, well, what sort of experiences have you had like that? And talk me through. So I'd ask the question, but at the end of the day, if I wasn't getting anywhere, my solution was, I've got 10 other customers to see this week, and I'll try to a certain extent, I'll do my best, but I'm not going to bang my head against a brick wall. Mm-hmm. So I was never desperate, and I never saw the point in having an argument. If that was their point of view, and I'd respectfully tried to persuade them, if that wasn't going to work, I'd say, okay, let's move on.
Were you never desperate?
No. I was never desperate. I don't think... I was worried in 1990 when we were trying to buy back our company and the world was in a horrible recession and there were 14% unemployment and our cash flow was just bubbling above the surface. I was worried in 2008 and 2009 when I suddenly had to sack 140 people and take $12 million worth of costs out of a company with 1,600 employees. It wasn't a nice time, tough times in business. But the thing that got me through was always this concept of the greatest good for the greatest number. So my responsibility as the leader was to make sure I made decisions which satisfied the greatest number of stakeholders, the staff that remained, the customers, the shareholders. And I couldn't get sentimental about shrinking from my job as a leader when those tough times came along. So, dark days, lonely days, but I was never desperate.
As a business owner, Andrew, can you afford to be emotional, or do you have to sort of put the emotional part of you aside and be...
Well, let's define emotion. I think you should never suppress your natural intuition, and I think you should allow the synapse between who you really are and how the world sees you to be as narrow as possible. So that's what I call being authentic. But I think what you're referring to is you had a bad day, you ran over the dog as you came out of the garage, you've got the flu, and you walk into the office. If you're the boss and you're leading that business, whether it's 5 people or 500, the show goes on, and that's where I do think you should suppress your emotion. It's not their problem. You put it in a box, lock it up, and leave it till 5:30 when you leave, or whenever it is you leave, and don't screw up their day just because your day hasn't started the way you'd like.
That's the actor training in you.
Maybe, but I think about it as, where do I want to work? And I don't want to work for a boss that's going up and down like a yo-yo. I'm sorry. If I wanted to work for a yo-yo, I'd go and I'd work for Donald.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Whoops.
No, I'm with you.
But no, so I do think about everything. What would make me motivated if I came to work? And if I came to work where I had to hide some days because the boss was in a bad mood and had a dark cloud over his head.
We've all been there, though.
I'm not going to... That's not a good scene. So it's going to affect productivity. And, I wanted 2,000 happy people every morning, mostly happy.
It's amazing how some people retain their job. I can't name names here, but I worked in a large advertising agency for many years, and the fellow who employed me at the time just gave me nightmares. He was a bully, mm-hmm. and we had a reunion. We had an 80s reunion of anyone who worked there about 3 months ago. He's still there, running the show.
Wow.
Many would openly say he is a bully. Mm. How do these people... I mean, how does someone keep a job like that?
I don't know. I mean, I think, it surprises me, just like some countries have leaders that, that shouldn't be there, and you say, well, at the end, I mean, countries like Argentina, who have some beautiful people and amazingly talented people, but for 50 years have voted in governments that really just keep robbing from them and destroying the place. So, keeping it sort of impartial. So, same at a company level. It's an aspect of human nature, Tim, that I don't understand either.
If you don't, I don't. What's been your biggest business win?
My biggest business win, I think, for me was in 1996. We discovered the web, and we put jobs online 2 years before Seek, by the way.
Wow.
And that's why we merged with TMP and did Monster.com. So I think I love the fact that we had a traditional business, which then was, 2,000 people, 900 million in revenue, and we discovered something that required us to cannibalise our own business, but in a sensible and very productive way. So, and we kind of came at it from a different angle, but that was a big win. And I always look back and say it was very formative. In some ways, of course, you'd say, well, why don't we own Seek? Well, that's another story. But I think that was a big mind blower.
They were one of my not one of my first clients, but they were a client of mine in advertising.
And they've done a great job.
Did a great job, and their marketing manager was a lady, Katie May from Texas, and she had this ability to she managed to get every piece of cheap advertising spot in Australia. Every distressed piece of advertising. If there was a construction site on Fitzroy Street, St Kilda, she'd say, ring the developer and see if you can get a hoarding out the front while they're building the building, and put a billboard up. And
amazing. She
was quite incredible. Just interested in discovering the internet way back then. Can you remember that moment when someone it might have been you, if it wasn't you, when someone's come into your office and said, Mr. Banks, there's this thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. I can remember he used to work for Booz Allen. He's an Aussie, and he came back from America, and he said, do you realise you can get candidates much more cheaply? So in my mind, we used to have to spend a lot of money on those classified ads and then display ads, and then we'd have to pay researchers to do what you'd call headhunting. But there was this thing where we could put ads electronically out there, so we could get candidates faster and cheaper. So for me, it was a way of getting... We already had 1 million resumes on our database, so we had nearly 10% of the workforce in those days. And it was a very clever way of getting candidates cheaply. So I think I was looking at it through the lens of our business, but I liked the digital medium, the idea that I could change an ad instantly.
Did you get it the moment he was explaining it to you?
No, but,
You had to trust in him?
Yeah, I had to trust him, and we employed him.
I bet you did.
Come and spend 60 days kind of proofing up the concept. And then I went down to Melbourne, and I think I went to someone at Melbourne University, a gentleman with long hair and glasses, and I had to get our first domain name, and he wrote it in a book.
Beautiful.
And we called it jobhound.com, but we also got morganandbanks.com.au and all that stuff. And the fact that he wrote it in the book, of course, is sort of a joke. Of course, if I knew what I knew now, I would have registered sex.com, jobs.com. If only. But anyway, so I got it enough for our sector, and that was an exciting moment because it then led to a whole change in direction.
How did you manage that? Because back then, it still was an idea, really, a concept that none of us could get a grip on what it was really going to be.
It was tricky, and we had 800 or 900 recruiters out of the 2,000 who said, no, my candidates in my database, you can't put them on something out there that's called the web. And then we said to them, well, what if you thought of candidates as sort of people? They are people after all, and then you lock them in a room and you don't do anything with them for 3 months. What do you think they look like? Why don't we let them out in the fresh air? And the idea of letting candidates float in what you and I would now call the World Wide Web, they got that, and then they realised, but if I'd interviewed you and I knew something about you no one else did, that was my data. So we sort of separated the personal stuff that someone got out of an interview from just a resume or CV, which we now know floats in the universe and should be out there and updated the whole time.
You touched on it earlier, Andrew, in terms of moments in business where you've kind of gone, oh, things aren't going so well. Mm-hmm. Can you think of a specific moment where you've laid in bed at night in a cold sweat thinking, I don't know how we're going to get out of this, and what did you do about it? This is Timbo Reid, and you are listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show, and the other voice you're hearing is Shark Tank Shark and all-round good guy Andrew Banks. Before he answers that incredibly pressing question, I think you'll like this note from Amex.
Here's a money-making tip from American Express member and Four Pillars Gin founder, Stu Gregor.
I, for the life of me, don't understand why a business won't accept Amex, because what you're potentially doing is knocking back customers who want to spend money on your product or your brand or your service or whatever it is. And I frankly don't understand it. If someone wants to give me their Amex and buy 10 bottles of gin, I tell you what, I'll take their Amex, thanks very much. You're potentially also denying yourself a big chunk of corporate business as well. You know, because a lot of sales guys, a lot of guys, I know me in my own business, I use Amex. And if I go to, if I ring to make a booking at a restaurant or a bar or something, I say, do you accept Amex? And they say no, I go somewhere else. So they don't even know the business they're missing out on. It beggars belief. And I often find myself having these rather awkward conversations at the with a shopkeeper or a bar owner or a restaurateur saying, why wouldn't you take it? I'll pay you the extra. I'll pay 1.5, the credit card service fee or whatever you want. Take my money.
It's Business 101, really. Make it easy for people to give you money. Speaking of money, the American Express Business Explorer credit card comes with 50,000 bonus points every year, a low interest rate, and 2 points on every dollar you spend. Not to mention a couple of tickets to the very swish Amex Lounge at Sydney International Airport. Search Amex Business to find out more. New American Express card members only. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, there's two times that come to mind. 1992, when the parent company that we sold Morgan, we started Morgan & Manx in 85. We sold it in 88 to a British public company, went on their board, and then we bought it back in 92. So a few months before 92, they were going bust. And I was worried that the parent company was going to take us down the plug hole with us. I was very concerned that might happen, and then we exercised our rights as local directors to stop sending cash to them, and the next phase was we bought the business back. But I was a bit worried, and I had to get the sort of legal advice that every business owner has to get, which is, what's the definition of trading whilst insolvent, and how do you make sure that doesn't happen to you? Because if you keep sending the parent company cash, the subsidiary goes bust. So that was a bit tricky, and it definitely gave me a cold sweat. And then the other time was the time I mentioned. I think 2009, 10, 11 was tricky, not because we just had to cut costs and the world was, gyrating, but, there was a time there when, Kevin Rudd, I went on Channel 7 with Kevin Rudd when he talked about providing that bonus to everyone, but he was sitting next to me predicting unemployment will go to 12 or 13%. I'm happy that I said, no, I don't think it will. I think this is different. We'll probably peak at around 7 or 8%, and frankly, it turned out to be about that. But what was uncertain about that was it wasn't just that the business was tough, the whole environment was scary around the world.
What do you say to business owners that are going through adversity right now?
Talk to someone, think about, what kind of adversity that is, and think about who can maybe give you a fresh approach, and it may not be your partners or your spouse. So don't try and, muddle through on your own. Get another point of view, because some of the things you're sweating over, someone else may give you a quick solution and say it's not quite as bad as you think, you're too close to it. And in other cases, you might get some help that you otherwise wouldn't get.
The American Express Idea Exchange that you and I are travelling around the country doing at the moment, we had a good discussion the other night in Brisbane on mentoring, and I think we've got to show. I asked the audience how many have got mentors. It wasn't a lot. It certainly wasn't the majority.
No, I think business owners themselves are a bit shy, and particularly in the smaller business area, and I think they shouldn't be. And the other thing is they always think that they need mentoring or advice from people in a similar business, and I don't agree. I think you should go for business models that look the same. So you're in retailing, you're in service, or you're in engineering. But actually you can get a lot of help by perhaps seeking advice from someone who's got a similar business model to you but isn't actually in the same business. And you might find that reaching out to them, going to a meetup, a connection, or some sort of industry related connection, or business, small business group, you might find someone who you can strike up a conversation with, and you both win.
I love that advice, and I know the whole room loved the advice the other night of actually buddying up with people not in the same industry but with the same business models.
Yeah, thinking. Well, I'm selling to a consumer, or I'm selling web, or I'm selling in retail, or I'm a consultancy practice. But for example, we were in the recruiting business, which was business services. We got a lot of really good ideas from engineering firms that sold services, and other companies, law firms and accounting firms. So they had nothing to to do with recruitment, but they were basically managing a professional workforce, selling services, pricing, timesheet administration, internal and external views. So, asking questions and being curious is another good antidote for a business owner that's finding life a bit tough.
You've done very well and life's all good and rosy at the moment. Do you look back at the days of when you were a particularly small business and long for them? Or were they days where you go, gosh, I'm glad we got through them there? And
No, I don't have any regrets about getting through them. They were great moments. When I can remember when we were just 12 people and we'd finished our first profitable year and we all went out and gave ourselves an award. Everybody got an award. Right. So 100% of the company got an award. Champagne.
Kind of waters down the award thing.
Well, we ended up with, doing a black tie event and 2,000 people, and we used to do like the Oscars, and we had the Go and Get Tufts Award or the Consultant of the Year Award. But no, I love those early days. It was obviously a bit more intimate, and I think you just look back and say, well, how lucky are we? We've come a long way and we've learnt a lot.
You talk about when you're at Morgan and Banks at Talent too, that you would bring staff, you would bring clients into the building, and they would look at your staff and say, Andrew, what are these people on? You clearly built a very good culture. How did you do that?
Well, we tended to recruit around their personality and style and their passion, and because there weren't a lot of recruiters in the industry, we tend to hire a CPA to do recruitment of accountants or an engineer. So we tended to recruit around who the person was rather than what they used to do, the resume. So we practiced what we preached, and we did a lot of sort of behavioural stuff, and in the end we ended up with a group of 20, then 50, then 150 people who most of the time loved being there and were there because of their aspirations and their personal abilities, not that one of them happened to be an engineer or happen to be an accountant. And there's something magical that happens when you get critical mass. They then all start to feed off each other. And yes, that individual said, what are they on? Because everyone was enthusiastic and positive, and they thought, well, it almost to them seemed a bit contrived. I remember one guy saying, they're a bit American, aren't they?
Cult-like?
Like being American, there's something wrong with it. But what they would they were sort of, it looks like a TV show or something. Yeah. And no, they were just happy, enthusiastic people. But, the next question was the question I liked the most, which is, he said, he asked me who trained them, and I said their mothers do. And by that I meant that we hired people who had a particular style and character and aspiration, not what they had on their resume. And he laughed, and he understood the point. And the other amazing thing about a culture like that is once you get through that critical mass, it starts to build on itself. And people who don't display the right behaviours of teamwork and collaboration and genuinely trying to help each other succeed get quickly found out.
Yes. I had Carolyn Creswell of Carmen's Muesli on the show recently, and we talked about culture. She had a different approach to culture, which was she just come back from the Googleplex, and she did have the hairdressing salon in the office, and she did have the air hockey table and the barista who'd come. All that, is that important?
Well, I think if you're a large corporation, you're trying to differentiate yourself. Making it easy for people to come to work and stay there is not a bad strategy. But I don't think that's culture alone. I think that's benefits along with how you pay people and how you reward them for getting a good bonus. How you reward people for doing a good job. But I think the cultural aspect is about how you originally decide what kind of people will do well in your environment, in your business, and then you recruit around that, train around that, and reward around that. But I'm not against having dog walkers in a business, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, and it works. So many business owners that I speak to identify people as being their number one problem in getting their business off the ground and running and growing that business. Mm-hmm. So advice, Andrew, for these people listening about attracting great people and retaining them. I feel like we've touched on the retention idea by building a great culture.
Well, I think in this day and age, though, you first have to don't think about it as jobs and people. Start with the concept of work. And if you think of work as a big red box, now break it up into what work should be done with permanent jobs, permanent part-time, temp, contract, virtual, and outsourced. So that's the first thing, because otherwise you might be trying to put a square peg in a round hole by hiring people and churning when actually the job shouldn't be done by a permanent employee. So I think in a modern day and age where a lot of people want flexibility, that's the first place. And then take each of those slices that I just talked about and make sure you've got the things that are really key and essential to those jobs and recruit around those as a minimum, but obviously then, decide what kind of cultural framework, what kind of people you want in terms of their style, personality, communication, all the soft skills which are not so soft. And I think add that. And then the key thing is once you've got a bit of traction, a lot of people don't stop and look at their most successful team and say, have we ever analysed what makes them successful? So I'm a bit of a fan of performance profiling. So even if you've only got 3 or 4 sales reps in your team, have you ever analysed why they're successful?
What are they doing right?
And then just think about comparing some of the personality and soft skills that they have around the people that you're hiring.
It's a great marketing lesson, that. Just look to what the big boys are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're doing things really well, sometimes they're doing things really poorly, and mirror them. I had a fellow on the show about 6 months ago. He had a jiu-jitsu, what's that martial art?
I think it's jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu visit. Now, he created a whole online training course, and part of that was he needed to build a membership. He needed to bring a whole lot of people in to make this sustainable. He looked to Sports Illustrated to say they've got a great email approach to building an email database. They've got an incredible membership model where they've got, how many hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And he just borrowed the best bits of Sports Illustrated magazine, and as a result, built a multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah.
Marketing, Andrew. What does marketing mean to you?
It's the strategy of sales, not sales itself. So it's brand, what sort of market you're going after, pricing, how you engage with customers. It's the strategy of sales. I think a lot of Australians confuse the word marketing with sales and try to hide behind the actual selling side. Sales is a completely different function, and you need to, obviously have a trained sales force so they know how to execute the marketing strategy.
I always say marketing's great at generating inquiry. Sales is good at converting that inquiry.
Yeah, but marketing's also kind of if sales are the the emissaries that you're sending out, where are you sending them to, and why are they engaging with customers in that way with that price? So to me, a marketing is all about the strategy of how you're going to execute your sales. And clearly, if you get the marketing wrong, the pricing's wrong, the customer engagement's wrong, the benefits mentioned are wrong, your sales force are going to fail for the wrong reasons.
Can you remember a moment back in the day when a marketing strategy worked its guns, worked its bum off for Morgan and Banks or Talent 2 or Monster?
Oh, absolutely. Well, for Monster, I think the big one was we got 14 million resumes in about 4 weeks when we ran a Super Bowl ad called When I Grow Up.
You ran a Super Bowl ad?
Yeah. It cost us $8 million for 3 different ads.
I love it.
And it got 1 million resumes, and I think in about the first 8 hours. It was run in 1999. You can Google it up, you can find it on YouTube. It's called When I Grow Up. So all these kids saying, when I grow up, I want to file all day. It basically exhibited all the things that we are frustrated about if we don't like our job. So it was very successful. So that was pretty good. 40 million resumes. We were 60 million resumes by 2001.
How many resumes did you hope to get from that Super Bowl ad? Did you?
We didn't know. Maybe 1 or 2 million. Because it's a workforce of 140 million in the States. So that was pretty good.
Can you just remember the moment the agency came and said, "We get one of that cross on the media schedule. Oh, that's for the Super Bowl ad."
Well, we knew we wanted it. We were about 3 years in, and Jeff Taylor ran Monster.com. I didn't run it, but I was part of the board of the company that owned the business. And it was a Boston agency, quite a small one. And we knew we wanted to run a Super Bowl ad, but we didn't know quite what we would do. And by accident, with that ad, we did what Dr. Dre's done with Beats headphones, beating the Bose competitor, which is superior
Bigger.
Technically,
yes.
But actually, Dr. Dre and Beats got that customer engagement thing going with his whole sort of imagery, and so they outsell Bose headsets apparently 5-1 according to a Harvard case study,
and they're nowhere near as good.
No, and so we accidentally did the same thing with the When I Grow Up ad for Monster. We basically talked about all the things that everyone who's frustrated with their job thinks about through the eyes of kids.
Would you think today, when was that? That was 1999.
Yeah.
How would you feel about doing something like that today from a marketing point of view?
It would work, actually. It would work, yes. I think anything... I mean, the millennials have shown with their purchasing power that they are very attracted towards things that talk about experience and that they identify with personally, as opposed to this is what this product can do for you. That doesn't work so well. So I think, engaging customers' emotion and having them feel like they almost belong to the brand, probably a bit like we all do with Apple, that just got to be $1 trillion, I see. I mean, we all sort of identify with that. Well, those of us who are Apple,
Count me in.
Yeah.
Well, count me in up until the last couple of
Well,
years.
yeah.
I'm open to change now, but
you can look at it, and you either do or you don't, but you can still look at it and say that's what they've done. They've somehow, and that's what they were all about. So I think customer engagement and moving the needle on that emotional engagement to a brand is as important now as it was in '99.
What's your favourite brand? Have you got one? We all have.
A favourite brand?
Could be car, clothing, could be a surf brand, it could be...
It's interesting, I suppose, I am a bit of an Apple fan because I've got a lot of their stuff. So in terms of a pure consumer brand, I don't
You're
know.
living in LA these days, and there's some amazing little brands. I mean, you just need to walk through some of the shopping
Chobani,
strips.
I like Chobani yogurt. That's not bad.
Chobani.
Chobani yogurt.
I don't know it. What do you like about it?
It's just fresh, natural. It makes me think about, running through a forest eating clean food. And I think they sell $1 billion worth of yogurt.
Wow,
every year, so they're doing all right.
That's a lot of probiotics.
There's a lot of probiotics.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I remember even like walking up and down some of the shopping strips in Santa Monica, just these little businesses that have created this beautiful visual brand, the emotional connection between you and the business. I mean, it's wonderful when you can see a small business do that and not with minimal budget.
Yeah, no. And in fact, Dr. Dre and Beats, is I think pretty sexy in terms of the way. I mean, I got myself a pair of Beats just because I thought they were cool, not because they worked anymore.
Sucked in, Andrew Banks.
Yeah, exactly. I was. So I think you could argue I was definitely fallen victim to that.
Yes. I just want to finish with a discussion around Shark Tank.
Oh yeah.
How did that opportunity come along?
I was living in the States about 4 or 5 years ago, and they rang me up and said, would you like to be on the show? And I'd watched it in the US. I didn't like it much in the US. I thought it was a bit aggressive and nasty to the contenders, but we had a conversation about how in Australia that wouldn't be the case. Australians don't mind seeing a bad idea destroyed, but they don't want to watch an individual get chewed up on television, or certainly most of them don't. So I thought it was constructive. I needed a game to play because I just sold talent too, and I needed to do something, and I thought it would also give me a good insight into what was going on in new businesses and startups, which is what it's done.
What was the process of casting you, or
Well,
was it a phone call to say if you say yes you're on?
No, they auditioned me on Skype, and they asked me all sorts of questions like, give me a nasty shark, give me a happy shark, all that stuff. And so Endemol Shine, who's the agency, were part of that process. And frankly, I was on the fence, and my wife and my daughter and Tricia, who works with me, all those 3 women in my life talked me into it.
Oh, they talked you into it.
Yeah,
and why were you on the fence?
Well, because I was just wondering, did I want to be, if I'm going to bid for those companies on a TV show, I've then got to live with those companies. I'm going to invest in them. And you can't do this half-heartedly, which is what's happened. I've now got 8 or 9 companies that I'm invested in that I wouldn't do otherwise. So I wanted to just think that through. But anyway, I'm glad I did. And together with that and this journey with American Express, I sort of feel like I'm a bit of a champion for business owners in Australia.
So that's becoming that, and I thank you for that. And I think it feels almost in the early days of that. I mean, you've been doing Shark Tank for a number of years.
No, I think the more important aspect of Shark Tank is it's got me into this position where, irrespective of the show and whether it goes on or not, and whether I stay with it, it's actually definitely opened my eyes to the fact that I've got something to contribute in the next few years. Not owning a business myself or running it myself, but being part of a business and backing people who have the guts to run their own businesses.
Just on the Shark Tank thing, it is an unusual concept. It's not like you're a judge on The Voice where you go in, you play your role.
Because we're spending our own money.
You're spending your own money.
Yes, it's an interesting thing, isn't it?
So reveal as much as you want to or can, but are you compelled to actually
Oh, yes.
have to buy into a certain
Well,
percentage of those that come before you? Or?
Well, I don't. No one. No, it's not in a contract anywhere. But if you were a shark on the show and you didn't buy anything, I don't think it would be very authentic, and I'm not sure you'd stay there. So we've all sort of invested a few $1,000,000, depending on how you look at it in different stages. And some of the deals fall through afterwards. Of course, people pull out.
I've had a few contestants on this show previously.
Yeah.
What's the feeling? How much do you know prior to it?
Nothing.
You know nothing prior to it.
Nothing. They walk on. It's all cold. We're kept separate part of Fox Studios.
Really?
They walk on,
Look me in the eye.
Absolutely cold. We are given a 60-second briefing before we walk on, simply to say, it's a mum and a dad, or it's a, somebody from New York has flown in, or it's a this or it's that. But we're not given, and roughly the size. That's it.
What would explain the feeling you have just prior to someone coming on? The lights go down, the door opens.
It's exhilarating. It's a bit like everyone. I mean, no two people are the same. We're all unrepeatable miracles, and so are every one of those pitches, and they're fantastic. And when you've done 97 of them in 17 days straight, which is what I have to tell you, you're pretty sharp. So when I go back to the Tank Stream in York Street, and people come in and pitch me the next week, I'm on my game. I'm on my game. Let me tell you, because and so that's good, because that's my main job. I'm an investor. So anything that keeps me current and up to date with all the diverse opportunities that are out there is a good thing.
Are you now a bit over people? I imagine you get pitched all the time.
Yeah, 3 or 4 a week in the tank, obviously.
Yes.
I mean,
what about in the street?
I got pitched on a Qantas flight by the stewardess coming back from Brisbane last week. He wrote a little diagram on a napkin and said, "Now, Mr. Banks, blah, blah, blah." Which, look, can you blame people for being enthusiastic?
No.
So honestly,
I think there's that balance
I'm not cynical about it at all.
Well, I think there's balance. I mean, good on him, I say.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
approaching someone in the public eye, I think, is a difficult decision. Many don't think about it, but I do, and I think it's, you should honour that. Last question, most memorable moment on Shark Tank for you? Was there a particular pitch or a moment when you've gone, oh, this is good?
I think one of the most memorable moments for me was with one of the first investments I made, and it's a product that is so simple, which is like a Dr. Scholl, dare I say it, insert, but ours is better. It's called SyncSol. But what I loved SyncSol. But what I loved about it was 2 amazing young ladies from Perth who were podiatrists who found a cheaper and more effective way of giving people comfortable feet. But the moment was really more when I could see how they had gone from being professional podiatrists to seeing this passionate opportunity, and sort of that the chemistry of that. And then I, in my mind, went, we've all got feet, and most of us are not that happy with them. So I like the idea of being in a business that just will go on forever. Yes. And here we are 4 years later, and we're in Chemist Warehouse all around Australia, and we're going gangbusters.
Wow. What's your involvement with the 9 businesses that you have bought into?
So I'm a minority shareholder. I'm between 40 and 10%, depending on which one. I've obviously paid for my equity, and then I have usually 1 or 2 phone calls a month, and sometimes when there's an intense thing going on, like with one of our investments, Mason Baker, which is the cupcake in a jar. We're about to take a product from the US and add that and do a proper launch. So we're much more involved in that for probably a couple of months, and then once it's launched, I sort of step back.
Love it. Well, Andrew, I've got this proposal for you, which I'd like to... It's a blank sheet of paper at the moment, but if we could work something up...
That's right, exactly. I'll give you $1.
Just give me a blank check.
Do you remember the ham dog? I gave him $2 for 50%.
I do remember.
So that's one of the most popular deals.
Good on you. Andrew, thank you for everything. Well, first of all, congratulations on your success. You've probably heard that before, but thank you for everything you do for small business. I look forward to joining you on the stage at future Amex functions. And well done.
Well, thank you, Tim. And I think small businesses are the heroes of Australia. They create more jobs, more diversity, and they make our life more interesting. And I really think they should be celebrated in this society of ours. So happy to share.
I think that's worth a high five.
Hey.
Good on you. Well, there you go. Andrew Banks, shark, investor, all-round good guy. What a great fellow. If you'd like to see a little promo video Andrew and I did in his hotel room, plus the Super Bowl ad he mentioned, head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/428. Before I share my top 3 attention grabbers from a chat with Andrew, if you need some graphic design done in your business and don't want to spend a fortune, then I think you are going to love what these guys have to offer. Cheap, quick, great. I used to work with a designer who'd force me to choose 2 of those 3 options whenever I wanted something designed. As a small business owner with limited funds, it drove me nuts that I could never have all 3. That's why I love Design Crowd. You see, Design Crowd is a website that helps startups, small businesses and marketers outsource custom design, from logos and business cards to websites and landing pages. In fact, Design Crowd gives you access to over 550,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. Here's how it works. You post a brief describing your design need. Within hours, you'll receive your first design, and over the next 3 to 10 days, a typical project will receive 60 to 100 different designs from designers around the world. You then pick your favourite, make any changes, and pay the designer. You know, whether you're an entrepreneur looking to set up your brand or an established business that needs marketing collateral designed, Design Crowd is your answer. For a special $100 VIP listener offer, go to designcrowd.com/Timbo or enter the discount code Timbo when posting a project. See? Now you can have cheap, quick and great design thanks to Design Crowd. Righto, be sure to hang around after my top 3 attention grabbers as another motivated listener shares a marketing idea that's working for them in the Monster Prize Draw. Plus, this week's advertising jingle is for all you Aussie kids who grew up in Australia in the 80s. But right now, my top 3 attention grabbers from that chat with Andrew Banks, thanks to our great mates at American Express and Design Crowd. Attention grabber number 1. Andrew is a genuinely good bloke, very accessible and very giving of his time. You know, I've met some people in the public eye and they aren't like that. And I guess the learning there is, as business owners, we can get a bit caught up in our own kind of self-importance, our own busyness, whatever, our own success. I encourage you not to, because I think when you are open like Andrew, opportunities really do come your way. Attention grabber number 2. I loved Andrew's advice around finding time to get creative in your business. I've spoken about this before. I hope you're doing it. I hope you are scheduling time in your diary alongside all the meetings and busyness to get creative in your business, and also schedule some personal time as well. Attention grabber number 3. Andrew's view on marketing versus sales is critical to understand. Too many business owners don't separate the two. You do. I know you do because you're listening to this show. But what about the rest? You got to understand the difference and apply it. They're both different skill sets. They both deliver different outcomes, and they're both critical, and they both work together. That's what grabbed my attention. I'd love to know what grabbed yours. Leave me a comment. Go on. Just pause now and head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/428 and leave a comment in the show notes.
Come on down. It's Timbo's Monster Prize Draw.
Oh yes, indeedly doodly. It is time to reward another motivated listener for taking some marketing action. That's what we do in the Monster Prize Draw. If you want to enter, it's pretty simple. send me an email, tim@timreid.com.au, that's REID, telling me one idea you've implemented from listening to this show and what impact it's had on your business. Keep it simple, keep it short. Boy, I'm getting some long ones. They're impressive, but I just, it'd take a whole episode to read some of the emails I get. Thank you, though, to those who do send them. If I read yours out on air, you win a prize or two and go into the draw to win a hot lap in a racing Porsche with past guest and racing car legend Steve Richards. That's valued at $2,500. I'll award that at the end of the year. But today's winner is Peter from the Marketing Study Lab in the United Kingdom. Let me read what Pete has to say. Hey, Timbo, been listening to your podcast for some time now, grabbed plenty of people's phones and subscribed to the show for them. It's in their best interest, of course. I love that. Thank you so much, Peter. You've won a prize already. Now, this isn't really one of your tips that I have benefited from. More of a listen and learn process. Let me explain, he says. The Small Business Big Marketing podcast was one of the first podcasts I ever listened to, and I was hooked on it, both your show and podcasts in general. Thanks to you, I have now started my very own podcast. At the time of writing, I'm 10 episodes in and loving it. Mate, that is great news. I love it when a listener starts a podcast. I think it's a growing list. It would certainly go into the tens. I won't say 100, but it's a lot of listeners I know that you guys have started podcasts. Some have stuck with it, others haven't. Back to Pete. Although I'm yet to profit from it, my main reason for starting it was to help students who are studying for a marketing qualification. Listen up, plug coming, he says. It's called marketingstudylab.co.uk. I've had some great feedback so far, and it's all down to you starting me on this path. So good on you. As long as I'm helping people gain a qualification in the profession, we both love and I'm a happy boy. Keep up the good work and spilling all the gold. Oh, and will you be a guest on my podcast? I know my listeners would love to hear from you. We have been in contact, Pete, and you know the answer is yes to that. I would love that. And mate, thank you. Well done on starting your podcast. Now, I have got a couple of gripes to share with you before I tell you what you've won. One, you don't have an email signature. That makes me furious. You are a marketer, Peter. You no email signature. You say, happy marketing regards, Peter. That's no good to me. Second gripe is, I don't know what your surname is because you've got no email signature. So fix that, please, buddy. It doesn't have to be long. I've gone through it before. I've even written a blog post on email signatures over on the website. You can check that out. Pete, for going to the trouble of sending me this, you have won a Mr. Lee's Noodles 6-pack valued at $30. That's a UK-based company, so I'm hoping they can dispatch from the UK. And you get a backlink on the Small Business Big Marketing website, which is priceless. And you go into the draw for a hot lap to fly out to Australia and race around in a Porsche. Thanks, Pete, and everyone else. Send me a learning, tim@timreid.com.au, and you can win as well. Righto, Aussie kids, remember this fantastic old jingle?
It's Australia's favourite breakfast. We beat it number one. From Aussie kids to grown-ups, it's loved by everyone. Aussie kids, are we fixed kids? Aussie kids, are we fixed kids? Aussie kids, are we fixed kids? Aussie kids, are we fixed kids?
I love that ad, that jingle. It's an absolute classic. If you grew up in Australia in the 80s, you know what I mean. You know, this segment I am loving. I haven't had a lot of feedback on this segment, so I don't know whether you're loving it or not. I think when I launched it a few weeks ago, I said it was a little bit self-indulgent, but I also do think that jingles are a lost art, and it's kind of fun. I think, you know, maybe go and find a muso and say, hey, write a jingle for my business. You could put it on your messages on hold or something. You can watch that whole ad over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/428. Well, that almost wraps up another episode of your favourite marketing podcast. How presumptuous of me. Next week, we hear from a stand-up comedian. This is an unreal interview who's successfully grown and sold 2 mortgage broking companies. He's had done it tough along the way, and he has got some incredible learnings to share, including a concept he calls audience responsiveness. Plus, I chat with a bloke who owns the barber shop that I go to. It's a small business that I absolutely love, and we're going to go deep into the topic of mental health and small business in the coming weeks. Whilst not a marketing-specific topic, I do believe and I do know that a happy mind equals a happy business. Don't forget there's an entire back catalogue of interviews over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, including transcriptions of each interview. A big thanks to American Express for sponsoring this episode. Search Amex Business to find out how your business can be rewarded by using an Amex card. And a big thank you to Design Crowd. Head over to designcrowd.com/Timbo. Get $100 off your first brief. And we all need some good design in our business, right? If you love the Small Business Big Marketing Show, let another business owner know about it by grabbing their phone, like Pete did, and downloading it for them. Do that. Let's just say you do that once a day. Every one of you do that once a day. I think we'd be looking in pretty good shape to have this podcast booming around the world. Until next week, I am Timbo Reid. Thanks so much for tuning in. Your time is hugely appreciated. May your marketing be the best marketing. Bye for now.